everyone. I am Mildred Atkinson, Council, and we would like to welcome everyone to this meeting between the County Commissioners and the Board of Education. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Webb.
He was unable to make it, we could designate someone else to do it.
Mike,
He's unable to make it, we could designate someone
Gary,
else.
can you do that for us?
What are we doing?
Invocation.
Whatever it is, I'm happy to do it.
Don't you know you always pray?
Okay, absolutely. Let's all stand, please. And let's pray. Father, we thank you this evening for this opportunity we have to gather together as these two boards. We thank you, Father, for each one that serves on these boards. We thank you for their commitment of time and energy, their resources, their desire to do what is best for the children of our community. So we pray that you might bless us now as we work together. We pray that every conclusion we reach would be pleasing in your sight and would be the best for those that we represent. These blessings we pray in your name. Amen.
Amen. While we're standing, let's lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And while I'm standing, we would like to invite all the persons of law enforcement from around the county, I understand the various municipalities where invited, so we will stand and tell us what municipality or area you represent. For all the law enforcement officers and representatives, please stand and share that blessing us. Thank you.
Johnny Green, form. Randy Ginger, Pitt County Sheriff's Office. Jeffrey Spencer, Fall Police Department. Jason Jessel, Fall Police Department. Will Thurston, North Carolina.
Thank you.
Rita Eisenheim, Pitt County Sheriff's Office. Fleming German, Pitt County Sheriff's Office.
Thank you. Mr. Winter, I guess it's your show.
You know, already talking over here, sorry.
That's not unusual.
I tried to warn you.
Good afternoon. We appreciate this opportunity to talk about Pitt County Schools in a forum like this and about our security, where we are and where we're going, what we're trying to do. We obviously know it's very important to us, to you as a county commissioners, and also to everyone in the audience. So I'm going to take you through just some relatively quickly where we are. Then I'm going to jump into the second part of the presentation, which is where we're trying to go. I think it's listed as budget request, but we'll talk about that. Just so you can have an idea of what we do in Pitt County Schools as far as security. We have two lockdown drills per year. The first one is announced in the fall, the second one is unannounced. And we've actually tried to change that up over the course of the last year or so, where with our unannounced drills, we actually send someone into the building to find someone not necessarily in the front office, so they can see what's going on, so they can see where we're at, so the people assessing that can write up the evaluations. They can see where we may have some gaps, things we need to address. They check doors, they check everything within that school to make sure we are meeting the needs of the safety issues in our school. So that's what happens first, and then we'll then get a report back from the committee or the individuals who walk through that. That's actually made up of some of our people. We've also hired someone, a retired police officer from Greenville PD. He will go in and he helps with that as well. So we also have several security audits per year. Plus, we have our monthly SRO audits where they go through and check doors. They check rocks that are in the backs of the schools and the rocks in the doors. One thing if you've ever been in a school, you know that we have a tendency to put a little rock in there so the door doesn't shut all the way. So we go through and we check all those. That's what people do. We have people now, that's their job, is go around the school to make sure all of the time, to make sure that's not happening. We do have our SRO meetings. We have those once a year. I've told our guy that needs to be twice a year now, just so we can look at new initiatives and keep track of where we are with what's going on with our schools. You know, after the Florida situation in Parkland, we've had to go back and really reassess and reevaluate, just like every other school system in the country has had to do. So we're going back reevaluating those things. We had that meeting at Rose High School about a month ago, where we actually discussed a lot of the things we were doing. I'll go through a lot of those here as well. But we also have our annual staff training on crisis scenarios. All of our new employees have to go through the lockdown drills that everybody watches, that's produced by Department of Public Instruction years ago. It's been updated, but all of our people watch that. All new employees do. Our substitutes, I'll talk a little bit about that later, but our substitutes watch that as well. Okay, we have that. We also have all of our other crisis plans. And Emma, would you hold that notebook up for me real quick? This is our crisis handbook that gets updated yearly and sometimes in the middle of the year as well. It's also online for all of our administrators. That was actually dated 2015 when it was put together, but it's been updated every year since then. So that's something we analyze yearly. And Jeff Hudson, our security officer, takes care of that for us. We also this year have created our Raptor visitor management system, which if you've been into a school, you realize to check your child out, you have to show your driver's license. They will swipe your driver's license. And if you're like me, you're hoping it doesn't pop up red or anything. So when I checked my daughter out, I had to do it too. So it's not something that's just the process. That's what you have to do to check your child out of school. So we have that in place now at all of our schools. That's actually new this year. We went through a major process to get that in place. With the principals evaluating it and teachers evaluating it and looking at which is the best for us, and that's the system we chose. All of our schools last year, we have a panic alarm in all of the offices that can go directly to 911, but also to the fire department or the police station, whichever they need. So all of our offices near the front office have that in place. We also have a dedicated phone line for emergencies. If some reason you would need to call the school or the school needs to call someone, the line's always there. Over the last several years, you've noticed, specifically about 2 years ago, you noticed when you walked into most of our elementary schools, you noticed to get in the front door, there's a buzzer system. You have to hit that buzzer, they'll call your name or call you, and then you tell them who you are, what you're doing, and they'll buzz you in. We also have that at our early college. Most of the schools have that. The traditional high schools do not. We'll talk about that in the near future here in just a second. We've also added access control to several of our campus-style schools, and that includes like G.R. Whitfield, South Greenville Elementary School, Lake Forest, Bethel, Chicago, thank you. So those schools have the swiper card systems. Everyone understand when I say that? When you have to have an access card, it actually looks just like that, similar to what you have for your building, county commissions. Same thing, we have one for our schools. That's currently now in 4 of our campuses, and we'll be expanding. We'll talk about that. We also have our entryway corridors that we've added this year to Lake Forest and Chicago as part of the renovations for those 2 schools. We're just going to walk you through the process of what that buzzer looks like when you walk in. Thank you. When you walk into Chicago or Lake Forest, there's actually another set of double doors that prevent you from walking past the office and getting into the hallways where the students and the teachers are. It actually forces you to walk into the office where then they will then buzz you out to get into the main part of the school if there's a reason for you to be going down the main hallway, or if they're just going to call up your child, no, you need to go to that. But we have that second set of double doors. Okay, so that's something that's been in place for those 2 schools this year, but something we've been working on for the last several years at our schools. We'll talk a little more about that. We also have 14 state-funded SROs, several of which are here today in the back. That is funded with what we call at-risk funds from the state. Those are at-risk funds about $1.2 million worth of salaries, and that's at 11 schools. The 3 largest high schools, South Central, D.H. Conley, and Rose, each have 2. Then we have the other traditional high schools, as well as CMFs, EBA Cock, Welcome. That's only There's one split at A.G. Cox and Aiden. Did I get them all? Okay, I think I got them all. So, but then we have, so that's, obviously, if we have 37 schools, we're not covering all of our schools. That's going to be part of our conversation later as well. We want to add that. We have 16 plus security cameras, 1,600 plus security cameras in our schools right now, most of which are dated when the school was retrofitted with those going back to the year 2000. Obviously, if you're at like Lake Forest, when that was built in 2010, 2011, those cameras are a little bit newer. So most of our camera systems are very old. The bus cameras were the ones that were designed for the early 2000s. Most of those are not working at this point. We have updated a few, but most of our buses do not have cameras. We had about 60 last I saw, and about 30 cameras were actually working. We also have, I didn't bring my phone up here with me because I didn't want to vibrate while I was standing here, but we have the Pitt County Schools app. I assume all of you have it, so I've asked you to pull out your smartphones and pull it up real quick. No, that can happen, okay. But if you look at our app, built into our app is a tip hotline for our students or for parents where they can communicate things with their administrator, with the counselors, with people at school that they see that might be going on, whether that's a bullying situation, whether that's a school security situation. They can do that anonymously, they can do that, with their names, whatever the case may be, but that's something that they can do. So that's built in right now. So we're still working on trying to get that information out. That's a way that the students can communicate information to their principals, to their counselors at school. So that's kind of where we are at this point with what we have in place. Now we're going to talk a little bit, where are we trying to go? Well, obviously, as I said, since the Florida shooting, we've all been reanalyzing everything, what we're doing, what's important, trying to reprioritize, what our needs are, whether that's, we've talked a lot of things about, even mentioned bus cameras. Our board took some thoughts on that, made some thoughts public on that about 3 or 4 months ago. We've had some rethoughts on that, obviously, looking at the bigger picture and maybe need to rethink what we're doing with our school security dollars. But really what we've learned here from, and this is, I sent a team to go listen to the superintendent from Sandy Hook, from several years ago, talk about what did they learn after reanalyzing and reevaluating the situation. The biggest defense, and this is the biggest push we're pushing now on our principals, are the locking the internal doors. That's the number one thing we can do. And that's part that goes back to the SRO audits I shared that we do. I started collecting those myself, talk about reanalyzing, reevaluating yourself, going through that and say, okay, I saw a school that had like 6 unlocked doors. I called the principal, what are you doing? That's not acceptable. There's no reason. There's nothing that's going on in school, the door can't be locked. So that's the conversations we're having. So those are the things that we've listened to from the superintendent of Sandy Hook on what you have to do. If you go back and look at Sandy Hook, you can see every door was locked until they got to the 3rd or 4th door that happened to be a substitute teacher. That's why we're going back and reevaluating our substitute training list as well, so we can see what's going on there. We're also talking with our principals about how to make sure those doors are locked when you have subs as well. It's not good enough just when it's a regular teacher. The substitutes need to make sure they're locking their doors and know these rules as well. So we have that. We've also gone back right now in our current budget. We have actually budgeted for access control systems at the 6 additional schools in the school system. And those schools, Aiden Elementary, Elmhurst, Walcoats, Grifton, Falkland, and CMX, will be adding access control systems to those schools this summer. That work is scheduled to begin the day after students go home for summer. We will start working on those schools right away. The next thing we're going to look at is our entryway corridors. We talked about those. 6 traditional high schools, we're going to add those. Those are going out for bid this week, next week, right about now. So we'll be able to put those in place this summer as well. So when we come back to school next summer, we'll at least have either buzz-in system, access control, or an entryway corridor at every one of our schools. So we'll have that everywhere. The next three items on here, to finish out the entryway corridors is going to cost about another $800,000. If we go back and look at our updating our school cameras, about another $1.3 million, and then our bus cameras are about $1.4 million. Those are things that we want to do. The asterisk there means that was part of the LOBS 1 grant or program we put together about 3 or 4 years ago, but because of costs, because of limiting it to $20 million, those items were pulled off at that point. We have a lot of new things going on, or at least several new things we're looking at here. When we talked a month ago at Rose, we talked about the different aspects of school security, the response, the hardening of the schools, and the key component I talked about at that point with Chief Mark Holtzman at the time was the threat assessment. And so what we are implementing right now, in fact, this is a 45-minute conversation with my board earlier today, so we're going to spare you some of that. But we're implementing threat assessment management teams at all of our schools. And before I can butcher this completely, I'd ask, he doesn't know this, Travis to step up here and give you the 3-minute version of what these threat assessment teams are about. Would that be okay?
Yes.
Right under the bus. We are working currently, Dr. Linker and our board have made it a priority to look at early intervention prevention of acts of school violence. We want to try and prevent it from ever coming to where a locked door is making the difference between life or death for some of our kids. And so with that, we're looking at a model that the FBI, Homeland Security, and FEMA have recommended for years now. And the state of Virginia has implemented K through 16. So all their public schools, their universities have put in place. We want to put that in place here in Pitt County, which is threat assessment management teams, where whenever there's a concern raised, if there's an imminent danger, of course we want to report it to law enforcement right away. But what if it's something that isn't an imminent danger, but we slowly see students disconnecting from the rest of the campus community, they're starting to have thoughts that are concerning, that create fear in others, and we worry that it might be escalated. And so in those instances, we want to bring together a team of professionals, administrator, counselor, social worker, psychologist, local law enforcement, social services, mental health, have the right people around the table who can gather all the facts about the potential threat that exists, analyze those threats, and make a determination for whether or not it is a legitimate threat, and how we need to intervene so that we can keep the campus community safe while looking out for that individual and trying to re-engage them back into the campus community. And so our board and Dr. Linker have made this a priority. We're going to be working with our school staff to implement threat assessment management teams throughout the summer and into next school year, so that that's something that we can do proactively in Pitt County to try and prevent school violence.
So it's not just good enough to look at the building. We got to look at the students we're working with on a daily basis to make sure we're meeting the needs of those individual students, and that's what Dr. Lewis is working on setting up for us. We're also going to talk about school counselors. We think this is a major component in our school safety. Is the fact that by the national average is one for the national ASCA, the American School Counselors Association, sets a ratio of about 1 to every 250 students. We're almost just a little bit less than 1 to 400. For us to meet that ratio, we're 17.5 counselors short. I know in our local budget, we're going to be asking for half of those this year, half of those next year, because we think that's a big component of school safety, as well as, bullying obviously is a hot topic. It's been around for 100 years. We're still trying to work on that, but this is a way that we think we can work on that, getting more counselors in our schools. Over the next 2 years, hire another 17 or 18 of those counselor positions. This past year, we've been lucky enough to hire 3 additional social workers with our federal allotments. That was a new Title IV initiative that came down from the federal government this year. We're also working on increasing access to mental health for our students. We have Pride integrated, working with our students in different capacities. Hopefully we're working with our families. We're also working with Eastern AHEC to train all of our employees on ACEs. I don't know if you're familiar with the video, but Adverse Childhood Experiences. Very powerful moving video, if you've had the opportunity to see it. So we're working with, we'll be working with all of our counselors on that program as well. In fact, all of our counselors are actually at Eastern AHAC today, getting training on some other things, but working with Eastern AHAC is a great relationship between them and Pitt County Schools. Since the Florida shooting, we've been able to connect with a doctor at Biden's. This has turned out to be a bigger program than I had actually heard of, but it's called Stop the Bleed. One thing you find is in all the research, and at least when I talked to the Biden doctor, it was clearly mentioned that people die from bleeding out, not necessarily just the direct from the it's lousy to talk about it, but from the gunshots, okay? But if you're just laying there and you bleed out and die. So we're looking at training, and we'll get some special kits. I know this gentleman is working with the General Assembly. South Carolina has already moved forward on this. I understand North Carolina, along with Representative Murphy, are taking the lead on this, so we can have these in all of our schools. But if something would happen, at least the kids who are there, if they were wounded, would be able to be attended to before more tragedy. So that's, all of our nurses have been trained already. They were trained last month. They will be working on the first responders at the schools next month and over the summer going to next year. So we'll have multiple people trained on that. Next thing we want to look at is we just want to increase the number of our SROs. At this point, we're spending $1.2 million state funds on 14 SROs. We would certainly like to increase those numbers we have 37 schools, maybe 37 schools, maybe a couple of schools need 2, but that's a pretty big ask. We know that. So we're hopefully want to be able to reach out to all the different municipalities on some help. I can tell you Farmville has already reached out and wrote a grant to where we'll actually get an extra SRO next year in our elementary school, Bundy Sub. So kudos for them for reaching out and being proactive. So but again, we need another 25 of them or so. So that's just, but it's a start. And everything's a positive step. So between the towns of the city of Greenville, Winterville, Ayden, the rest of the communities, Bethel down to Grifton, and the Pitt County Sheriff's Office, we're going to be requesting support from those individuals through our board for supporting additional SROs. Last thing, and the most powerful thing, we talked about doors being locked, obviously, is the biggest thing we can do inside. But the biggest thing we can do as a school system is build on our relationships with our students. And that's where last week I was meeting with the SGA at Rose High School, talking to their students. I met with SGA's presidents of several other schools, including Conley and Ayden Grifton. But what we need to do is keep building those relationships. What I've asked all of our principals to do at the high school is pull members of SAD or the SGA, it's kind of discussed at the Rose meeting as well, to get together basically a group of students to talk about what do they see. What do they see we need to work on? And I got the list from Conley the other day about what do they think we need to do? What's the most important? In addition to hardening of the schools, but they talked specifically about the relationship piece, communication with their counselors, being open and upfront about what they see. They understand it. It's real important that your kids understand this. So I know that's just the high schools and we're starting there, but that's the way to get this process started, is for our kids to realize, and I say kids lovingly, is for those students to realize that this is going to take all of us. If they see something going on, they need to let us know. We try to work with them on the social media, but we know they're light years ahead of us when it comes to that sort of thing. Okay? But that's what it's going to take. So that's the communication relationship piece, and we're using specific groups at our high schools to get our students talking to us about what we need to work on. I think. Thank you. That's a little bit of Star Trek keep coming out of me, so so questions, Chairman? So at this point, or how do you want to handle this, sir?
The agenda here is any indication of how we should proceed. I suppose you've made your discussions.
Yes, sir.
Your remarks. So we've got here number 6, discussion. School security concerns, and I believe it'd be fitting if that become
close to you when you speak.
At this time, we would like to open the floor for discussion about school security concerns with the members of the board, of both boards, that is. Board of Education, yes.
I'll just, it goes without saying, I think that we all share concerns about our school children and their safety while they're in school. And I don't think that's a point we need to belabor, but just from our perspective, I'll speak for myself, and I think for at least some of the members of our board, we are getting a tremendous amount of feedback from our community members and the people in our district about their concerns, the schools that they feel like are not shored up enough from a safety perspective, and where they think we need to do better. And we have listened very well to all ideas that have been brought to us, but just to make it very clear that we are hearing from our district members that there's a great concern and there's an outcry for an improvement in what we have available to us for school safety.
I would say specifically, I've heard from many members that they see a need and increase in SROs. They just feel like that they would feel more at ease when they drop their kids off in the morning at the elementary, even at the elementary school. And I say sometimes, when we evaluate what our SROs do, we look at how many instances or infractions or whatever that they have. And they may not have many at elementary school, but it only takes one time for somebody to go on that campus. And to many of the parents that I have talked to, that has been a real concern. They feel like there should be an SRO at each school. And, I know we've talked about funds, we've talked about priorities. Well, this is one priority that I have voiced my opinion to our board, especially that we have SROs at each school. And in a way, Pitt County Schools has been blessed to where we're not first to have a major school shooting. We are, and I'm sorry that these other school shootings have taken place, but we can learn from them. We can read and find out what would have helped and what may have prevented as a death in that school. And so I know that if, and I hate to say this, but if there was a major school shooting at one of our schools, next week there would be a school resource officer at every single school in Pitt County. That's what I don't want to happen. I'd rather we need to be proactive in what we do and within our system, and I just think that is something that is important. Another thing that I have voiced to my board, and which is not popular, but I do support teachers who want to. Just let me talk first. Teachers who want to, because here's the way I look at it. When I drop my 3 grandchildren off at school, there's not a resource officer there. There's not any protection whatsoever at that particular school. But what concerns me is that there would be, with highly trained people who have gone through training through our sheriff department, police department. Many of those trainings would be on a monthly basis, and people who are truly experienced. Now, I'm not saying that we are arming all teachers. No, I am not saying that at all. I'm not even saying the teachers that are armed have to be notified who they are. And I know that a lot of people may not agree with that, but when you look at the shooting in Florida, that coach who was standing in front of those students, if he had had a weapon and that shooter was right at him, may have made a difference. Every single child that can be saved is worth whatever we have to do in our schools. Every single child is important. It's more important than what we've done over the past years. We have to look at things differently now than we did 5 years ago, 10 years ago, because society has changed. And we have to adapt to it. And everyone, the commissioners, as well as the board members, as well as our staff, we are responsible for keeping our students safe at our schools. And when I lay my head on the pillow at night, I don't leave anything unturned. Thank you.
Any other, okay, Caroline, Ms. Dorcher.
Yes, Caroline Doherty, District 7. I have to say that this issue really came home for me when my husband and I attended the March for Our Lives rally in Washington, D.C., put on by the students who were in Parkland at Douglas High School and were shot at, and have good friends and teachers who were killed. There was even a girl who got up and spoke who still had scars on her face and on her leg. And I will tell you that I had not thought about my daughter being a member of that group, but they call themselves the Columbine generation. And they call themselves that because April 20th, 1999 was when Columbine happened. My daughter was 7 months old. We happened to be actually in Colorado for a conference at that time. And I think it's very different to our students what that means. They call themselves the Columbine generation. We learned today, I believe there have been 188 school shootings since 2000 in the United States. 200 student deaths at schools. This generation of students has grown up in the shadow of death. They have grown up with the threat of violence, not just in our communities, but in their schools, where we require them by law to go, starting at age 7. We require them to learn, and most of them do go to schools. As a society, I personally believe we have failed to do all that we can to protect them. How can we not recognize that our children are our most precious resources? How can we continue to falsely believe it will not happen here? It is not whether, it's when. It's when. Our society has come to that point, I believe. Will we continue to prioritize other issues, other things that we think are more important to use our tax dollars for over the safety of our children? Are we going to continue to do that? What's more precious than our children, than our future generation? I think the time to act is now. We have a shared responsibility, the 18 of us. We were all elected, and I am including Glenn. We were all elected and trusted by the voters and the parents to ensure that our children receive a sound, basic education in safe environments. It's a constitutional right. The North Carolina Constitution guarantees them that right. And they elected all of us to share that responsibility for facilities and for operations. We have to act now to make good on that promise in the very best way we know how. I don't believe that arming teachers is the way to go, and that's because I've talked to many teachers and haven't found one of them who have said that is what they want, either for themselves or someone else in the school. That is what I have been told by the teachers that have spoken to me about this. The data does show that, 55% of trained law enforcement officers' bullets miss, and those are people who must go every few weeks for high-level training, and they're evaluated on that. So if somebody who does that for a living, who's an expert at shooting, has about a 50% when it's under duress, and that's what this would be, is under duress, I don't see how we could live with the fact that a gun could get taken out of the control of a teacher or a volunteer by either a student. I don't see, or how we could live with that if they shot somebody, a student or another teacher, accidentally. I don't think more guns in our schools is the answer. I do think trained law enforcement officers, I will 100% endorse the SRO in every single school. And I know that's a big climb, but I think it is really important. It in part acts as prevention, primarily it is intervention. We have several other things that Dr. Linker has presented to the board, safety measures that he's already undertaken, and safety measures that he's very clearly spelled out. I don't know if y'all have them yet. It'll be soon, next Tuesday maybe. We're going to be asking for more than we normally ask for, but these are not normal times. Our circumstances have changed, and we've got to wake up to that fact. Our students, our children are woken up to that fact. We as adults have got to put on our big boy pants and our big girl pants and do what is right. And that might mean leaving a few potholes or putting off some renovations in a county building here or there. There's some things we have to do to protect our children right now. Many of them are one-time capital expenses. One time. We're digging deep, and I think the parents and the taxpayers of Pitt County are willing to dig deep for one-time capital expenses that we can put in place now that will last for years and years and years to protect our children. And then I hope that we can partner with all of our municipalities and our sheriff's department to find a way that we can get a trained SRO in every school every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stewart. Now, Mr. Forrest.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, Mr. Chairman, Mark Owens, and for the county commissioners to meet with us today. We really do appreciate this. As a matter of fact, Madam Chairman, Mr. Chairman, I would suggest that this is something that perhaps that we could do more often in different and other kinds of issues that are very, very vital and important to both the schools and the county as a whole. I think this is a wonderful thing today that we're doing. I want to thank the public for being a part of this today and all the concerned citizens that are here today. I do think there's some things that have already been mentioned. I won't go into those again, but there's a couple of things that I would like to suggest to both boards, and particularly to the county commissioners, because we could not exist as a school system without you guys, and we appreciate you. We appreciate what you do for the school system in the whole county. We appreciate you and the concern that you have with our most vital commodity. You know, I'm in the agriculture business, and I produce corn and beans and some of those other kinds of things, Commissioner McLaughlin, but there's nothing I could produce any more important for this county or this country than children. And they're our most vital commodity, our most vital product. I will say this. There's two ways, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairman, I think that we can get a hold of the safety issue. One way is hardening the schools. And I will tell you that Pitt County Schools is going to do everything it can within its power to make sure that our schools are more hardened, to be more protective of our students. Now, what that means is some of those things we can absorb the cost of. Some of those things that the superintendent has already pointed out to you, Commissioner McLaughlin, are going to be needs that we're going to have to ask the county commissioners to help us with. Some things that we prioritized in the past might have to take a backseat to these new priorities. And I want you guys to understand that everything that we've asked for have always been priorities, but crisis and issues and concerns come to the forefront but sometimes you have to reprioritize it, and that's important for us. So we're going to come to you, and we're going to ask you for increased revenue and increased resource support for helping us harden our schools. That's going to be important. The other part of it, though, is just as important, if not more so, and that is this. We've got to continue to be able to identify those people, students, citizens, whomever, that are going to be and could be a present danger to our school system. And that doesn't cost as much resources, but it does mean that we as a school system are going to have to reassess those kinds of committees, those kinds of management teams that we put into school. And we were assured today in our work session that that is a top priority for our school system. So I want y'all to know that from that standpoint, we have already begun the process. Superintendent Linker has already suggested that to both of these boards today, and I'm looking forward to that, continuing to make progress and continue to evolve so that we can better identify those people that are dangerous to our students. And then finally, I think we would be remiss if we didn't say this. A great school system that becomes more safety aware means that we've got to continue to have a faculty and a staff that are experienced, concerned, and well paid. And so part of the process that we're going to be coming to you for too, and this is part of our safety agenda, is to make certain that we have teachers and staff that are of high character, experienced, and will continue to remain a part of a growing vital system in our county. So we are going to be coming back to you and asking for increased revenue in the totality of making our system safer for our students.
Thank you, Mr. Forrest. Any other member of the board like to share their concern for?
I think you all, my fellow board members, have stated, I think, very accurately what we talked about today at our Board of Education meeting. But I just wanted to comment that I don't think anyone is surprised about the issues that we're dealing with in the schools. And I'm thankful for this opportunity to be here with the commissioners today because what our schools look like is a direct reflection of our communities. So the issues with violence and with security that we're having to face in our schools is obviously something that we're facing in our communities. And so this is a big partnership. This is a team effort, I think, between all of us who are elected to serve you, because it's a deep issue. And yes, we do need to secure our defense, and we need to make sure that our schools are safe and build secure corridors and all the things that maybe are one-time capital improvements. But we need to make sure that we're not exhausting our defense on the field as well, and we're investing in a good offense. And that is the guidance counselors and investing in our families and partnering with our communities. And I know that the county serves through social services, and they serve a lot of families in our community in another aspect besides the schools. I'm a mother and a taxpayer and a board member, so I also understand the pie is only so big, and I understand that. Also, as a taxpayer, I understand that I would much rather my money go locally than further away from home. So, as a taxpayer, I'm willing to consider if we had to make the pie bigger, I would think that we could ask our taxpayers, are you willing to pay more for this? And then it's not necessarily you having to make the decision. We can ask the taxpayers. And that's what we're here to do, is to represent the people that we serve. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. Madam Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Williams? Yes, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mary Beth Williams, and I serve all the students of Pitt County, but mainly I serve the students north of the river. We had a board work session earlier this morning that lasted several hours, and I left there feeling very well about the work that our system has put together with Dr. Nick, our superintendent, with Dr. Lewis, and also with our Facility Services Director, Matt Johnson, and the input from other board members. I think all of us have received calls, especially since parking, about school security. I'm very excited about the partnerships that have been established for and I hate to use these terms, but in the event of a mass shooting in Pitt County, we have put mechanisms in place with our local disaster services, with all of our hospital people, our rescue, fire rescue, and our emergency. And I'm looking forward to being more educated on that, as well as all of my other board members. It is sad to say about what Ms. Doherty said, that these kids have grown up in a Columbine generation. But that's our new reality. But we as a board can't do it all on our own. And it takes a lot of education, not only for ourselves, but for our community as a whole, and the best interest that we have in our students' success. No student should feel that they have to go to school afraid every day. That's the key. It's, fear is no different, I see, than hunger. If a child is hungry, they can't learn. And if a child is scared, they can't learn. And it's our responsibilities to do what we can do to fill their stomachs and to feel their hearts and minds to know that when they walk into any classroom in Pitt County schools, that they're safe. And in order for to do that, we have to rely on the resources that's available, to us, that we're willing to do as parents, as, elected officials, and just as taxpaying citizens in Pitt County. We know that, the county commissioners budget do so many other things. You support so many other entities. But right now, regardless of what it is, this is the point that we are in. And we have to do something about it. And so we'll be asking for what, for more than what we normally ask for when it comes to dollars. I'm not one of those people who believe in teachers carrying guns. That's just not, for me, that's just not a good thing. Because if you look at the data, you look at the statistics, even in these states that, teachers carry weapons to school, there's been accidents. Even in training there were accidents within the last couple of months. I feel with the climate that we're in, with our black and brown students, especially our black and brown young men that are growing at a rapid rate in fear and things like that. I just feel like, they would be the center of a target, and that's just my reality. It is for my family and other black and brown families throughout this country. So I'm gonna never agree to put weapons in the hands of anyone that has authority over children in school. But like I said, we're going to come to you today to ask for a little bit more than what we normally do. I've had parents to call me and ask, that, even about, any first entering campus, the first thing a parent will say is metal detectors, do we have those, but it hasn't been one of the things that we have discussed. But, our SRO officers are trained individuals, and we trust them with our children on a daily basis. And we feel like, you know, the more training that they have and the more interaction they have with the community about their roles and responsibilities, I think we'd be a lot better off. That's just what I ask.
Let's see, Mr. Forbes, is there anyone else? Okay, Mr. Fagundes. Ms. Fagundes.
Hi, Melinda Fagundes. Just briefly, one thing I want you to think about when you're looking at SROs in the schools is the thing that's kind of dear to me is with all these tragic shootings, a lot of times there's a problem with that person, obviously, that's carrying the gun. And whether it's they've been bullied, they've got a bad home life, they've lived in poverty, whatever the cause is, just remember that the SRO is not just somebody sitting at a school waiting for somebody to come in for them to protect you. The SROs are mentors to our children and students in there. And one thing that I've passed along when we're educating folks, you think that a child or a student is going to go to their teacher if they need something or help. And that's not always true. If they have a problem, it may be the bus driver. It may be the cafeteria worker. It may be very much the SRO, because I've seen them in different schools where students, they develop a relationship. We've read about how they do it in the community with the different police officers working with, young people in the communities and establishing relationships. So just keep that in mind, that it's not just protection, it's also somebody there that's providing a good role model and helping those students out. So hopefully, you never know, it might prevent someone from making a bad choice. Thank you.
If I may just carry up the caboose, I dare not go over all what's been said, but we've been past month, 2 months, we've been over many issues. Today we went over a lot of issues and have agreed to a lot of things that we're going to do to change the system. In other words, make it more safe. I agree with all that we said that we are going to do. I think if we put into practice those things that we have, I don't think we would have a need to go to the point where we would need additional kind of forces like what's being used against us, so that we have it to use against them when they come. Don't think we're at that point. And when we do reach that point, I think we are in a position where we're going to need a lot of help. But as you have seen, as outlined by Dr. Linker and his staff, it is a very good system, very good patch of data that we can use in order to make sure that we're ready, that when we send our kids out in the morning, we know that they're safe and they can go to an environment that's conducive for learning. Thank you.
Okay, now we'll go back to Mr. Forbes.
I just wanted to say, the threat assessment management teams that we've been talking about that are being implemented, I think that's going to be a vital program that we have in our school system to help reach, number one, it will cause for communication between different facets of individuals to come together and share knowledge about a particular kid or whomever it may be. And then another thing I would say, as principal of 2 high schools, 1 K-8 school, 1 K-5 school, I was principal at a school when the Columbine shooting took place. Now, and I just have a special, for the individuals and for the staff who are out there in those schools, when you have to deal with, because when there's a shooting somewhere else, there's always a ripple effect that you will have in your school. We had that at our school. We had police officers going in and out, investigating all kinds of things. But as a principal, to wake up each morning, go into that school, knowing what is going to happen or take place that particular day. Lord, help protect these kids. We can't do it, but you can. And I just think what we have to do as adults is to make sure that we're doing everything we can. There may be some things that we don't like, and it's not pretty, but I don't want anyone to lose a child. I'm a pastor of a church, and I have preached several funerals for young people. And you can't explain to a parent why they lost their child. They want specific answers, and you can't give it to them. You know, as an administrator and as a pastor, I just want to make sure, and as a community, part of this community who's been in this community 50-some years, you want to do all you can to help the children. And I just think it's important for both the commissioners as well as our board to make hard decisions sometimes that we don't like, and to set priorities that will benefit our students. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Forbes. I'd just like to echo what I've heard my fellow board members say today to the county commissioners, and we are on board, I think, with most of the things we've heard today. I personally do not want to arm our teachers with guns. I like to arm them with the tools they need to teach our kids. That's what I would like to see. And also, as a social worker by profession, I think that we need to, this is a great time as we are looking at using our school social workers, our counselors, and also working with our community at large, because they could help us as well, and especially our other institutions in the community, such as our faith-based community, as well as our other agencies that are out there that has been trained to do some of this work. So this is a great time, commissioners and fellow board members, that I think we need to sort of rethink some ways that we have done business in the past. There's lots of resources in this community that we can utilize, and this is the time to take on all of the challenges that we can, or use those resources that's already there. And also, one of the greatest resources that we have is our families. Our families might need to be trained because they don't know, they need help. So we might need to have some parenting sessions working with them to help their children how not to be bullying, how not to be doing those things that are incorrect in our school system. We need to work with our families too. They are definitely a great resource that we have not really looked at, because we thought it was in our business to work with the families. It's not just a social worker's job to work with families, but it's all our duties to work with the families. We are a village, and we could definitely, I think, do more work with our families where these children come from. And so at this time, are there any other last minute comments from our Board of Education members? If not, we will turn it over to our chairman, Mr. Owens, to pass the torch to the board members.
Thank you, ma'am. On behalf of the Board of Education members, superintendent, and the staff, I want to thank each of you for your time that you put into this. It appears that you're on top of the issues. Everybody present today has a concern. Did you not be here? I think we're approaching this in the right amount. And now to follow up on what I said previously, we will go to our individual commissioners and start with Tom to see if there's any expression you want to make comments or.
Well, Mr. Doherty, you have definitely given me some food for thought. I believe that we travel in different circles and we hear different people, because I'm telling you, I don't know of very many parents or very many people that are against properly trained and experienced and well-qualified teachers having guns. We're not talking about all teachers. There may only be one or two in the school. There'll be arms and such. I'm hearing this from highway patrolmen or past highway patrolmen. I'm hearing from past police officers, past sheriff deputies, present highway patrolmen, present These are people that they deal with the public all the time, and yet the other day I was stopped. Well, I say the other day, about a year ago, I was stopped where they were just checking licenses and stuff. And when you come up and you got a concealed carry, is you notify the police officer. So I told the police officer, I have a patrolman, I said, I have a concealed carry, but I'm not carrying it. He looked at me and says, well, why the heck not? They understand that there are people that are willing to try to defend not only school children, but you and everybody here, if they were in such a position. So while having said that, and I know it's an unpopular position, but I fully agree with you, and I think down the road, we're going to eventually get there. But having said that, it has been, from what I can glean out of this, the vast majority of incidents that have, where we've had school shootings, the child or the people that are involved at some point in their life, you brought it up, were bullied. And it's gone basically unaddressed. And we've even had it in Pitt County where we're hearing people that are crying out all the time where their children are being bullied. And I hope that part of your what do you call it, the threat assessment is going to be looking at that very seriously. When you come up with a situation where you know that there's a high likelihood that a person has poses an imminent threat to society, there is a term, and I had Janice Gallagher verify this for me. It's a term that I was familiar with called exigent circumstances, which basically says that if there is information that says or suggests that someone poses a clear and present danger, you can do something, you can interact. And the police, unfortunately, down in Florida, they had overwhelming opportunities to stop this guy. And I will not mention his name because I think part of the problem with the Columbine generation is that stuff gets repeated over and over and over. And back during Columbine, it was going on for 2.5, 3 years. And I was screaming at the TV saying, shut up, you're going to have copycats. And here we are 20 years later. And how many copycats have we had? It's because we just keep on and on. But there are ways we can go. And that's one of the reasons why I asked that the Highway Patrol and the local law enforcement, the police and the sheriff department have representatives here to be able to say, maybe not right now, but to understand that we as society want you to look at these situations. And if you can impose exigent circumstances and take the guns away from people, or never let them have them to begin with that shouldn't have them, well then do so. Don't wait till it's too late. As far as a school resource officer, they're in a uniform, are they not? And I understand the mentoring, and I think that's great. But they're also identifiable. Whereas a school teacher, properly trained, and not everybody and his brother knowing that they're carrying, they might even be a better preventive force, because if you're going to go into a school and you got a uniform on, you immediately become a target. With all the things you talked about, where you come into the front door, you got a double door, and then you got another double door, is there anything that would stop somebody? I got a 30-30, pretty powerful rifle. Would anything stop a 30-30? Probably not. I could probably get right through that second entrance. And anybody that's in there, they're in danger. And we, by admission, did you say we only have 14 SROs? Correct. 14 for 37 schools. That means that if you got 2 of them at 3 high schools, that takes it down to 8. So you got 11 schools basically protected out of 37. So you literally have 2/3 of your schools completely defenseless. And I don't care how how good the police and the sheriff department and the highway patrol are, they're not gonna get there as fast as somebody that's already there. They may respond quick, but if you have proper defenses, I think you need to go beyond the hardening in the schools. But having said all that, I believe that we as county commissioners, and one of the reasons that I requested that we have this joint meeting was to hear from the school board as to what we really need. And this will probably be real unpopular with my board initially, although we'll see. Is if we need to spend $4 million, we don't need to wait for a state bond issue. If we need $4 million now, we don't need $4 million in a reserve account just to make ourselves feel good. If we need to float a bond issue, we don't need to go through the principal efforts of that because it can take 18 months? A year?
Year or less.
Okay. So we'll say a year or less. But you're still a year away. Do we want to wait a year? I don't think so. So if we have to borrow the money, Scott, I'm telling you right now, me as one county commissioner, if we have to borrow that money, and if we have to raise taxes to do so, then let's do it. What's one child's life worth? What's your child's life worth? So while we can talk about varying suggestions as to what we might and might not do, the bottom line is we have an opportunity to act quickly, or we also have an opportunity to procrastinate and delay. And I'm not for one to procrastinate. Thank you.
Charles.
On a hot mic here. Commissioner Colson touched on just about everything that I stand with him, except for his willingness to raise taxes all of a sudden. I don't like the idea of throwing money at a problem, especially hiring more SROs. Now, is that a security resource officer? Okay. But if we're going to come up with more funds, God forbid raise taxes again, I do want to be assured if there is one ECU professor or school or county college who has a concealed carry, I do not want them banned from defending their life and others.
No. Excuse me. Good to see you.
Good afternoon. I agree with some of the things that my fellow commissioner said so far. Of course, I don't want to raise taxes either. The teachers, I believe that we should give the teachers the tools to teach the children, and I don't think that we should give them something else to do when they complain about a lot of paperwork. They don't have the aides to help them in the classrooms anymore. So now they're going to have to be trained in law enforcement. So I think that should be left up to law enforcement. And I want every child to be safe. I want my grandchildren to be safe, and your grandchildren, your children, all of our students in our schools to be safe. But I just think that if we start arming teachers, that we get into maybe a teacher may think that she is being threatened, and maybe there becomes an accident right there in the classroom where the student did not have a weapon or was not going to attack the teacher. But the teacher perceived that to be the case. And I have to say, as Mary said, especially with our black and brown males. So I'm here today, and I heard your presentation, what you're planning to do. You told us where we are now and where you hope to go. I'm in favor of more SROs in all of the schools, and I would think that in the high schools, you would need 2 in the high school, because high schools are large. So 2 in the high schools and 1 in every elementary school, middle school, whatever. And make all of your other requests or all your other ideas or what you plan to do, and I think you have that in place. Your buzzer systems, your double doors, and all of that. So, and I know that will take money. So I will be expecting you to come and ask for more money. I don't know what we will do about it, but we'll work with you. I'm willing to look at it, and I think I heard you say that you will be prioritizing maybe some of your needs. So with security being at the top of your priority list, I'm sure that you're going to really look at everything you ask for and to determine that it is absolutely necessary for the protection of our children. I do have a concern about the cameras on the bus. There's no cameras on the bus, so I do have a concern there. I will be looking to hear your presentation during budget times and give it great consideration. Thank you.
Madam.
I want to certainly thank all of you, especially the school board, chairman, council. This is a very complicated issue, as you noticed. Everyone has different opinions. I'm from the school of thought. If you have not been there, done that, it's kind of hard to understand the mechanics of the situation. I'm a former, I'm a firearms instructor. And those of you who have been in law enforcement know the significance of being on the firing range or being having to carry a firearm. It's not a simple task. And I've received so many calls, I can't count them. People call me and say, one thing, Melvin Baldwin, I want you to understand that we don't want our teachers having firearms. They're there to teach. They're there to help our children teach. And to go undergo a stressful situation of carrying firearms is just something that I don't want to see my child involved in. And they list so many different situations. I know for as a firearms instructor, there's a shoot, don't shoot, there's stressful situations you have to go through. And again, not being there and not done that, it's difficult to understand. So I want to let you know that this is something that I certainly cannot support. Something I've heard that you said, that the threat assessment, I think that's a great area that we can deal with, and the lockdown drills mentioned 2 lockdown drills a year. I think that is an area that we need to do. Our children need to understand the seriousness and the nature of not lockdown drills. Could you respond to that one?
Yes, the state requirement is 1 per year. We do 2, one in the fall, one in spring.
Good. I certainly support that. And there's other things that has been mentioned, not to labor the time, I won't go into it, but I do want to say the SRO officer certainly one that I would support, that having those individuals in school as a way of protecting our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. Beth?
I've got a page full, and I know we don't have time. I'm as ready to go as all of you. But most of you know me as a county commissioner. Some of you may not know that I served in Pitt County for 24 years as a school principal. One of those 6 years was as an assistant principal. So I think I've got one school up on you, Mr. Forbes, as far as being associated with the administration. With that said, I think it's important that you understand that I do have knowledge of a school and the security and the number of students, and you've got cafeteria workers, you've got custodians, you've got bus drivers, it goes on and on and on. We think of like one faction, but there is never one faction in a school. Straight up, I never wanted to carry a gun. I don't want to carry one now. I'm not afraid of a gun. I was raised in the country, hunting with my brother and my dad, and it's not that, but guns have no place in school, period. That is my thought. Okay, I am so impressed. Thank you, school system, school board, and whoever else was at the meeting that you all had. And this list and this plan that you have, and you've already started and initiated some of it, I hope all of you are listening very carefully. There's some great ideas there. I think what we must do, no, I know that there is not money there to implement all of that in 1 year. If you all still want to feed your children and open the doors and pay your teachers and all of that. And there needs to be some type of not fear that these children will feel in the coming years. We can't set up a situation where they may be afraid to go to school now, but I would be more afraid if I felt like that I was going into a fort or a jail or whatever. With that said, my suggestion is what you have already said. I think you need to prioritize. What is it that you want to focus on first? What do you want to come to us? Or what 2 things do you want to put in your budget to bring to the commissioners for us to discuss? There was also some mention that we had something to do with what you do with the money once you get it, or with the schools or the pupils or the teachers, but we do not. The commissioners have one job, and that is to help finance the schools. This is where you come to get the money. You're not the only ones. We have a lot of children. We do not have a single, one sibling in our house. We have a lot. The health department, social services, the sheriff's department, it goes on and on. But the school has always been our priority. And if you will go back and look over the years, it has remained the priority of Pitt County commissioners to do the best that they could. And I know you never feel like I never felt like we got enough when I was a school principal. But do you know what? We taught, and we had and teachers are doing that now, and you're doing that in your school. So, with that said, prioritize, decide what it is you're gonna focus on. I wrote them, because I had forgotten, the threat assessment plan, you get an A+ on that. Get to it though. You don't need a long list, people. You don't get long lists done. I don't. I get short lists done. Get those 2 or 3 or 4 things that you must focus on immediately, and the other 2 or 3 that you got to come down later on, and do the same thing with what your needs are. Come to us with what you want to focus on first. With that, and we're going to listen to you, and we'll do the best that we can. The money is tighter than it has ever been. I know y'all don't want to hear that, but it is. You pay your taxes, I pay my taxes, that's all we have to work with. And what comes into us, that's in our bank account, and that is it. The other thing is that I want to say I have visited 4 schools, one here in Pitt County, that has the enclosure where you walk in, you get bussed in the front door, and then you have the doors where you cannot go any further. And I'm sure I could bring a cannon, Mr. Colson, and blow through that door, I'm positive. But it is a big deterrent. I thought it was one of the greatest ideas I'd ever seen. I was trying to figure out, I don't remember your amount of money up there, but is it about $35,000 for an elementary school?
About right.
I mean, I don't know. I was figuring really quickly. Yeah, for the whole thing, but I was just trying, because you can't bite all that off at one time. But to me, that is one thing that would make the biggest difference in every school. Not arming the teachers, but having that entryway. And one of the schools I went in, you couldn't get into the office either. They had a little, I call it a teller's window, where you had to slide your identification in, regardless of what it was, before they would either call your child to come down to the office or buzz you in. Anyway, thank you so much for this. I think it's been very healthy, but I think we just need to be really honest with ourselves. You need to come forward with what may be a probability. If you all are willing to get out there and help us fight for a tax increase, come right on in, because we've got a lot of folks out there in schools, and if you're willing to pay that tax or get that up, then we can do more. But if not, we're going to have to take it a step at a time. Thank you very much.
I believe you're next, Jim.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank each of you for being here this evening. I think that this is a very good meeting and very timely to go on and lay out on the table what the needs are so that we can start building that into our budget planning. And I'm not going to rehash everything that's already been said. There are some good programs that have already been mentioned, and I think that everyone in here is unanimous in the agreement that we want to keep our schools safe. I mean, that's number one. You know, if we are going to try to educate in an unsafe environment, then we're really not going to accomplish anything. So we want to keep our schools safe. And I also know that in order to do that, it is going to cost money. We're in a whole new world. I think about when I was in high school and the safety factors that we had to implement versus the safety factors we have to implement today. And it's 2 totally different worlds, and I understand that. But and again, I'm not going to rehash everything that everybody's already said, but what I would like to do is to challenge all of us to do 2 things. Number 1 is to make sure that we are putting the pressure on the state to fund what they are supposed to be funding. Now, we did an assessment several months ago and looked at the money we were spending here in Pitt County that really was the state's responsibility, but they were not stepping up to their responsibility. So we had assumed that because we recognized that there was a need. So we really need to be putting the pressure on the state to do what they're supposed to do. The second thing I think we really need to make a hard assessment of everything we're doing in our schools to see what we can eliminate. Now, I know that once a program gets started, that no one wants to eliminate it because I'm sure that it does serve a purpose. But we've got to prioritize and recognize that there is not unlimited funds. So there may be some things that we are doing that is nice to do. Some programs, some courses we're teaching that are nice to do. But when we measure that against the safety of our children, then that kind of has to fall off the list. So I would challenge us to really do that, to help us as commissioners, so that when it does come to funding, we feel comfortable that everything that can be done to reduce the cost and to put the pressure on the state has been done. So again, thank you everyone for being here. Thank you for this meeting, and we appreciate everything the school board is doing, and Dr. Linker, you and your staff. Thank you very much.
Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Dr. Linker and the members of the Pitt County Board of Education. I'm delighted to see this meeting today, and I'm sure my colleagues know that I must be bubbling with joy that we are in collaboration with another board within this county. There are a lot of things that I want to clear up on. First, I do not agree with the fact of schools, teachers, having to have a gun. When something happens, the students see the teacher as the authority in the classroom. She is the authority in the classroom. I learned that when I was a Pitt County Board of Education member. The student regard that authority when something happens. What happens at home? You run to mama. They run to the authority. And if that teacher has a gun, who is in the way? The students who's running at her. So I'm real concerned about that. A teacher having a gun is another weight to put on their plate of the salary that they have currently. Their job, and I won't repeat what Commissioner Garrett said, because that's down here about the commissioners awarding the budget and you decide how to spend it. That's the way it goes. And I won't repeat the fact that unfunded mandates from outside sources of government comes to us that we have to spread the tax dollars over to take care of. But every school in Pitt County, this is what I like to say to the board members, education members. When you're considering the budget, look at every school and treat them equally when it comes to what I said here: security, health, and education. There shouldn't be any school in this county with a better security system than another one. All of our children are important throughout Pitt County, and that shouldn't have any weight over which school has a better security system than another. My background is research and information. I mean, in the 70s, I could find stuff in overseas that you wouldn't dream of. But the communication should be interactive with these people sitting out here who are paid by the taxpayers' money to protect, to preserve, to preserve, protect, and serve with their life for us. And we should appreciate them for doing that, and not that means don't give a teacher a gun. I really am, I don't want to get too passionate about that, but that's serious with me.
Thank you all for that.
That's all right, you already have it.
I want you to know this. there are a group of young men that stopped by the office where I do constituency service. And one day, they just walked into the office, and I think there's one person that you'll know about. And they says, I said, it was after this situation happened in Pitt County School. And they said, I said, so how do you all feel about the school? Are you safe? We scared. And I said, why? There are SROs at the high school. There are SROs at the middle school. Why are you afraid? When I arrived at school, I don't see anybody. I said, excuse me? So I had to go check it out. And I did it. And they were correct. I walked all over school. Nobody knew who I was. I guess they did it. But every school, Dr. Linker, should be equal when it comes to security. No child, her child is no important than mine, and mine is no important than hers and his. They all should receive the same security. And everyone should be able to know how to handle it who needs to. That's serious with me. What I say, education, health, and that's your job, the Board of Education. We send the money to you, you spend it like you decide to spend it. I think we just raised the taxes a little bit, didn't we? Didn't we just do that?
Yes.
You raise it much more, I won't even be able to feed my children, my grandchildren. I kicked all the children out of the house. But I want you to know, we can't raise our taxes into more poverty than we already have. After all, it's the families that's feeding these children. How you solve it, you're working on it. And I agree with prioritizing. He always tells us what you want to do first and what you want to do, what you want to get rid of. Tight pinchers, yes, but we all have to do that. I unplug all of my electric now so that because I'm experimenting with cutting my electricity bill. I unplug it to see if it's going to change. And we got to try and experiment some things. But these people out here are waiting. They have the know-how, and they know how to do it. And I trust that they will do it right, because don't put a gun in my hand. I worked at East Carolina University that have its own separate law enforcement system. And when they had to shut down almost the whole town when somebody was walking on 5th Street with an umbrella. Did you all remember that? Yes. The whole Pitt County was on alert because someone walking down the street that didn't look right had an umbrella hanging on the arm. So it's the law enforcement who has to make decisions about what is real and what is not. They are trained for that. I'm finished, because I could go on, but I just want everything to be interactive. When something happens that's a crisis, I want the fire department to get the right call, I want the law enforcement to get the right call, and I want them to be able to talk so I know when I can get under the table, or go in a hole, or do whatever I'm supposed to do. But they need to talk to each other as well. And we need to talk to others, because each one of us sitting around this table had a different idea about what that man over there should do with this school board. And the more we talk, communication is the key, and information is power. Thank you.
Finished, Mayor?
Yeah, I have delivered my sermon, Mr. Chairman.
Scott, do you and Superintendent Linker want to discuss number 7?
Yes, if I can introduce it, and Dr. Linker, if you want to make any comments. Item number 7 on the agenda references the proposed resolution calling for a statewide bond for school construction. The North Carolina Association of County Commissioners, I believe, probably working hand in hand with the School Board Association, is proposing there be a school bond referendum this coming fall in the November election. They're talking about there's a $8.1 billion pent-up demand for school construction statewide across the 100 counties. This is indirectly related back to House Bill 90, which talked about classroom size reduction, which will eventually hit Pitt County in classroom construction needs big time in about 3 to 4 years. The Pitt County, the school system has identified in this resolution $90 million of capital construction needs over the next 10 years. The Public School Building Fund Act of 2017, which corresponds to House Bill 866, Senate Bill 542, would invest $1.9 billion in on the referendum for the voters to vote on that would then be divided up among the 100 counties. We don't know how much Pitt County would receive under this proposal. This was put on the ballot for this coming November, and it would we're asking for it to allow increased flexibility in the use of these tax dollars for capital needs, not only brick and mortar, but also we would want obviously for security upgrades as those continue to be needed as well. So in talking to Dr. Linker, we just wanted to introduce this concept to you. We'll bring this back before each board separately. It is a joint resolution that we're going to ask both board chairmen to sign. And one question we finally got answered today, we've been seeking clarity on this, and that is, would this require a tax increase on the state level? And finally, we got the answer today. County Attorney Janice Gallagher got it from the Association of County Commissioners, and no, it would only be paid for through freedom of capacity and other bonds being paid off on the state level. So no tax increase would be needed for this. So we're relieved to hear that in terms of being able to easier sell this and ask for this by our congressional delegation. And assuming the Board of Commissioners approves this and the school board, we would obviously push this with our local legislative delegation as well as all members of the Senate and the House.
Would it be a value for us, since the two boards are together this evening, for us to go on and act on that?
It must publicize this meeting.
You haven't seen it, but I mean, I could read it to you, but I don't know if that's necessary.
We're the ones that
Would you like me to read it, or?
I think, Mr. Chairman, I think it would be a good idea for him to read it and then for us to act on it as a joint board together.
Okay, hold on. It's a page and a half. So, I'm entitled Joint Resolution of the Pitt County Board of Commissioners and the Pitt County Board of Education supporting increased funding options for school facility capital needs. Whereas the Department of Public Construction reported in 2016 that North Carolina's public schools need about $8.1 billion to pay for new school facilities, maintenance, and renovations. And whereas the 2016 report, also known as the Statewide Facility Needs Survey, found that 118 new schools are needed across North Carolina, 50 are needed immediately, and 68 are needed in 3 to 5 years. And whereas new construction, besides new construction, 1,560 schools need renovation to comply with safety and building code requirements and to address deferred maintenance. 459 schools need additions for new classrooms. And whereas in February 2018, the General Assembly passed Part 2 of House Bill 90, which phased in class size reductions for kindergarten through 3rd grade, which will necessitate significant additional classroom space over the next 3 years to meet reduced classroom size mandates. And whereas counties in both urban and rural areas are faced with high costs for renovations and repairs to update and make older buildings safe. And whereas deteriorating facilities which distract from learning impact achievement, and we need to ensure public schools facilities are conducive to study. I'm working on that language here. Whereas counties have limited options to raise revenue to pay for school construction, and whereas because counties lack sufficient sources of funding for school facilities, the state has responded in the past by approving statewide school construction bonds to address these critical needs. And whereas the top priority of the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners is to support legislation to provide state assistance to meet school construction needs caused by increased enrollment and mandated reduction in class size through a statewide referendum on a bond issue. And whereas a statewide bond issue is urgently needed to help address the staggering shortfall in funding for construction, repairs, and renovations of public school facilities through North Carolina, because outstanding needs are estimated at $8.1 billion. And whereas Pitt County's projected capital school needs of over $90 million over the next 10 years, and whereas Pitt County's School Bond Act of 2017, HB 866, SB 542, would invest $1.9 billion to begin addressing these critical needs all across the state. And whereas in addition to statewide bonds, the North Carolina Association In addition to the statewide bonds, the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners supports increased flexibility in uses of sales tax funds for educational purposes, as well as the continued expansion of lottery funds for school capital. Now therefore be resolved, the Pitt County Board of Commissioners, I think this needs to say, and the Pitt County Board of Education urges the North Carolina General Assembly increase funding options for school facility capital needs by passing the Public School Building Bond Act of 2017 and placing a statewide bond referendum on the November 2018 ballot. And it be further resolved that Pitt County supports increased flexibility in the use of sales tax for school capital needs, as well as continued expansion of lottery funds for school capital. And be it further resolved, the copies of this resolution be transmitted to members of the General Assembly representing Pitt County and all member counties in North Carolina. One other note I was mentioning to the county attorney, you might want to put a whereas in here. Whereas is our understanding this will be paid for through free capacity of state resources.
What's the pleasure of the
With that
commission?
addition, I move for approval.
Second.
I also move for approval.
Second.
All in favor of the commissioners, raise your right hand. So ordered.
Okay, all in favor of the Board of Education, raise your right hand.
I guess we're now down to Scott and you and Dr. Lincoln. Want to say anything else?
If I can just add brief comments regarding the county's budget, we're in the final throes of developing the budget that will be presented to the Board of County Commissioners beginning Tuesday, April 24th. And we've met with the school system, Dr. Lincoln and his staff. We might need to meet again this week to talk about an updated list of your prioritized security needs, both those that are one-time funding needs and those that are reoccurring. Again, need to probably in a prioritized manner so we can know how to further address those. We have looked at and talked to Dr. Winker about the LOBS borrowing. The LOBS is the limited obligation bond borrowing that we did several years back. We identified $25 million worth of borrowing capacity in the Article 46 sales tax fund, and the school system executed, I believe, $19 million of that 25, and we had $6 million on the table that could further be utilized by the school system. And we've talked about that moving forward on it, and I believe Dr. Linker's and the school board's intention is to move on that. That $6 million list, I think, has become like a $16 million exploded to a much larger list. And I don't believe that $16 million list necessarily represents the vast majority of the school security needs that have been identified. So we need to sort that out. We are looking at a potential one-time appropriation out of the Article 46 sales tax fund to address some of these immediate school needs that will be presented to the commissioners at the budget workshops coming up. Otherwise, the only other comment I have is, this is me beating my old drum about Pitt County's tax base, and right now, our tax base, we have a tax base representing about roughly $12.8 billion in taxable property. And when you compare us to our comparable counties across the state of North Carolina, those of comparable size, budget, population, and so forth, our tax base is a lot lower than others. Others we look at and compare 15.6 billion, 21.3 billion, 22 billion, 16 billion, again with 12.8. So every time we leverage a 1% tax increase, like last year, yes, we had a 1 cent tax increase in the budget. That yielded $1.3 million in additional monies that could be appropriated for county use, for appropriations either to public safety, education, human services, and so forth. So every time we leverage a penny in Pitt County, it's much less than our comparable counties. So we're behind the 8 ball in terms of having the comparable tax bases of these other counties. So we're being asked to do the same job with much more limited resources, that thus a continual need to address and reassess whether a tax increase is needed or warranted. So with that, that's all I have.
Dr. Lane.
I'd just like to thank the commissioners, Chairman Owens, for this opportunity. This is the first time we've had the opportunity to sit together since I've been here. I hope it's not the last. So it was a very productive meeting. And again, just thank you for your time listening to where we are in Pitt County Schools and where we're trying to go. You can see the team that I have out here is amazing. And you're grateful. I'm lucky to have them, lucky to be here myself. But thank you.
Madam Chair, do you want to make a closing remark?
Yes, I I would just like to again thank the county commissioners for having us to join you today to talk about school safety, one of the hottest issues in our times. And we thank you, and we look forward to some resolve on some of these issues.
Thank you, ma'am. Scott, what Dr. Lincoln presented to you today, is that inclusive in his report he's already given you for the budget that we're going to take next week?
I need to go back and examine that item for item. That's what I'd like to get Dr. Linker to marry the two
If
together.
not, I'd like to recommend that Dr. Lincoln get back to you to bring you up.
Yes, we can do that as soon as possible this week.
All right. And by way of concluding this meeting, I want to, as everybody else said, thank all the participants. My opinion about safety, we should have looked at some of these things before, but I'm glad we didn't have the tragedy to bring it forth to us. The aspect of what the school board has done in working and bringing these issues to us, to the commissioners, follows through with what I've always felt, that the commissioners should not and do not try to micromanage what the school board does. The safety of these children is in your hands, and that's what I look forward to. But I'd like to also say that Scott and Dr. Linker, I'm of the mindset, I agree with Tom, we shouldn't wait when it's a safety issue. But I'm of the mindset that there are monies available, federal and state, dealing with specifically the safety issue. Now, if I'm wrong about that, correct me, but if I'm not wrong, I'd like Scott and Dr. Linker to check that out. No further business, we stand adjourned, Commissioners.
Thank